the gravity of their illness. But instead, an adult would start elaborating and having fear. Whereas an adult often pre-suffers the future, even before it happens. Oh, I won't be able to do this, I won't be able to do this. Even with a very heavy treatment, the children being very present in the present, they suffer mentally much less. But this is, if we bring our attention to the present moment, this will bring us huge benefits. But the objective is to get to have this self-awareness of our own thoughts, which brings us to self-awareness of our actions. Together with this, we must develop the conscientiousness to remind ourselves of that which we theoretically already know, and to take the things that we learned and studied that seem right, that seem important, and there we bring them to our daily life, and with awareness to our actions, our choices, our interaction with the world. If we observe a large part of the path to enlightenment, it's made up of self-awareness and conscientiousness. The first step is to have conscientiousness of the preciousness of this life, to remind ourselves how much we're in a situation which is a special situation, which is very difficult to find. I'm not getting into the explanation now, but the first step, when we start our spiritual path, often I'm asked, what's the first thing I need to do to get on to start my spiritual path? And the answer is to generate self-awareness and conscientiousness of the preciousness of this life. One realizes this when you've realized this, when you think about the preciousness of life, the kind of inner joy that takes you over. How wonderful it is when we don't take for granted the wonderful things that we have. In essence, we can summarize in 3 points. To have the minimum necessary materially, healthy body, and the minimum material necessities to live. To have somebody who guides us correctly in the spiritual path. And that's also not obvious. And the third one? And the third thing is to have pleasure and desire and joy to follow the path. These three points might seem obvious, but actually they're not at all. Okay? It's enough to ask ourselves, all the people we know, how often one asks oneself, happiness, does it depend on the world around me, or does it depend on the way I interact with the world around me? How often do we ask ourselves that? Often? When we look at people, There are people who haven't even asked themselves this once. But if we look around, people we know, how often is this question asked? It's not because they don't have a good intellectual level, but they haven't had the opportunity to encounter somebody, somebody who will shows them that happiness depends how we live reality rather than reality itself. And this is the importance of having somebody who guides us correctly. For some strange reason we find ourselves here, but I don't mean to say that the only path is a Buddhist path by any means at all. I'm not attached to being Buddhist. I'm attached to being on a path to develop self-awareness and to develop love and compassion. But it's not that common. Also, with other religions, when we should learn to appreciate what we have and rejoice in what we have in simple things that we know. How wonderful I can walk, for example, that I can see, listen, hear, speak, that I have enough to eat. We could pass days and days just talking about the wonderful things we have, which is not obvious because the world is full of people who don't have these things. Therefore, the first step in our path is to be self-aware, or rather to have conscientiousness, to be aware of that which we already know, at the preciousness of this life. First, we need to listen to acquire information, and then to reflect, and until we get to our own conclusion, yes, life is wonderful. This life is wonderful. It's a wonderful opportunity, a rare opportunity, because life is made up of perceptions, sensations, present moments. And when something is so precious, we must treasure it, not throw it away. Therefore, when we have understood this, we need to generate conscientiousness, to familiarize ourselves, because very easily we take things for granted, the things that we have in this life, and we forget. Even though we know, and we spend our time entertaining ourselves. Nothing against entertainment, but we just distract ourselves, just to pass time, to want to pass time. When in fact life is a very wonderful opportunity. Then there's the conscientiousness of life, the certainty of life, the uncertainty of the moment of death, and then the causes of suffering and the causes of happiness. And here we get to the Four Noble Truths. Then the conscientiousness of the fact that obsession of self-gratification is the main cause of our own suffering. There's the conscientiousness of impermanence, that everything that we see or perceive is constantly in transformation. There's the conscientiousness of the interdependence. But before we apply these levels of conscientiousness, we must first learn to apply conscientiousness to simple things. to take one subject at a time that we heard and we think we've understood and which we've reflected on and we're convinced of. And then we need to act to perceive reality through this self-awareness, so that knowledge becomes a self-awareness which is present in our daily life. And this we apply to the way we act physically, in our speech, and the way we think. We have the conscientiousness of body, speech, and mind. I think that's quite clear now. And somebody will say, it's not, yeah, Lama, it's difficult. Yeah. It's not automatic. But we're made of habits. In our habits, one of the most one of the main things in our habits is that we're totally overwhelmed by the stimuli that our five senses receive. And it's difficult to direct our thoughts when they're bombarded with stimuli. To direct mind from inside to outside is not easy. To speak into a very self-aware way. We're usually guided by our anger, our fears, etc. We need to use our speech in a self-aware place that takes us into a good direction. And it's something which is very possible, but we have to. So many of us do that, but we need to continue to do it. Self-awareness, being present in the present moment, and conscientiousness, to be aware of that which we already know, to bring our self-awareness to that which we already know. And to help us to do this, last thing, we use objects to remind us. Also external signs, to remind ourselves, of these things. For example, a particular color that we want to work on, to write something, to recite words, to use a way of speaking, put certain jewelry to remind ourselves of different aspects of conscientiousness. For example, in the presentation of the Bodhisattvas, the five mothers, the statue here of Paramita, there are 6 types of jewels, or like Tara, Chenrezig, 6 types of jewels, earrings, necklaces, etc. They all have meanings. They remind us to have conscientiousness and self-awareness of the practice of the 6 perfections, to train ourselves: generosity, morality, patience, joyful effort, concentration, and wisdom. Buddha has already realized this, and when I dress myself in this way, I remind myself of these qualities. The color that particular clothes, the colors, jewelry that I have, something to do with our body that helps us to remember the thing that you want to be conscientious of. We listen to a teacher say, wow, yeah, that's great, it's true. But now I've related to that. I've connected, but now I have to be aware of it and have conscientiousness in my daily life of that.
Drugu namda shingla che parasho yedama guru ratna mandrala kam niryata yami jetsun lame kutse rabten chi nam karatin le chokchur ge pada lo san tempe drume sas drove min sel tatu ne gyur chi kewa kuntu yanda lama dan rame chiki pe la long church sadan lam gi yenten rabzon dorje change kopa nyur toba shun nimo dele tsindele nime kunyan delek shin nin tsen takto delek pe kuncho sumke jinge lob kuncho sumke ngodrub tsol kuncho sumke trashi shun
At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Tashidele, have a nice day, everyone. Thank you.